Hi, this is Ushio, today with another unscripted manga review, and today we're going to talk about Princess Freya. Prince Freya. Well, we'll get into that as we go on. So this is a fairly new, recent shoujo manga that Viz Media are currently putting out, and honestly, I'm having quite a good time with it. And fair warning, there are going to be spoilers. It's one of these manga where the very first chapter gives you a lot to worry about, and the twists and turns that happen in that first chapter shape everything that happens since. So, like Promised Neverland, for example, it kind of has that first chapter where everything turns bad, and that essentially influences everything that happens thereafter. Prince Freya is much like this. So we're going to get into it. There are going to be mild spoilers for the start of the series, and then my general impressions of it. So I'm going to spoil chapter one, which, sorry, it's going to happen. So I've read the first four volumes so far. So at the end of volume four, it kind of comes to the end of a fairly large story arc. So it's a nice place to cut off because volume five is going to start taking the series into like new directions. So the world of Prince Freya is essentially like a big European influence kind of set of kingdoms that are all having wars amongst each other. There's one big kingdom that's kind of either conquered everyone around or has beaten all of their surrounding countries into submission. And there's only one country that's holding out. Guess where our heroes live? So there's a situation, and yeah, chapter one. It's a tough time. Everything that bad that could have happened totally happens. So our main character Freya, she's just like a simple village girl. She lives in kind of obscurity with her mother in some village in the middle of the forest. Essentially, she's a bit of a crybaby, and she's kind of a bit overprotected and shielded by the people that care for her, which in the world that these people live in, it kind of makes sense. The only real thing that she can do for herself, she's a good climber. If she wants to get up a tree or a cliff, she doesn't really have any fear, and she can totally do that. So if she wants some, flowers or some berries, something like that, she can totally go and do that and help herself. But her childhood friends, there are two of them, they're brothers, and they're kind of like adopted siblings to her. They grow up together, that kind of thing. So with a shoujo element, you have like the boy next door and you have the rival. This kind of setup kind of starts, and they're soldiers and they have been off killing people in the war, and it's a bad time. They come to visit, they see how things are going on, and when they report back, it seems all is not well. Things are very, very, very bad, and things are going to get even worse. So here come the spoilers. There's a kingdom, it's going to invade, it's going to be a bad time. But to undermine the position of the current village is they've poisoned the prince, and the prince is going to die. And when they die, well, it's going to make things much easier for them to invade and do what they want to do. Our hero, Freya, she is the spitting image. She looks exactly like this prince, and she's forced to take his position. It's a trope you've seen before, like Prince and the Pauper. And in anime and manga, as well, you got El Hazard, you got Magical Miracle. It's something that's happened, and it's kind of a trope that we've seen before, and it's something that we're willing to accept. So it's something that we're sort of familiar with. She's going to become the prince, and she's going to basically get invited into this kingdom, and yeah, become royalty essentially. But it's not that easy. At the end of chapter one, obviously the prince has been killed, but his death is a secret. Only about three people know about it, and she has to completely change her personality. The princess is totally kind of like an over the top, bombastic, overconfident, enjoys violence kind of individual, and he wants the kingdom to like succeed, and he wants to kind of do it through force essentially. Very much the opposite of what our character is like. She's very timid. She's a big crybaby, but she can climb, and she does have this physical ability, so she can kind of fake the sword play, but she has to really switch on a tough personality if she's going to have that charisma to kind of inspire her troops, who know none the wiser. So she's lying to everybody. She's lying to her enemy, she's lying to her friends, and she's doing it in a way that's is kind of destructive to her. I'm just going to pick up volume 2 for no particular reason, but yeah, by the end of chapter 1, everything that's kind of been established is destroyed and torn apart. The prince is dead. Do I want to cover the spoilers or not? I don't want to cover the spoilers, but there is a general expectation with shoujo that you have your romance interest set up in a certain way, and you expect them to develop in like a certain direction. That is not going to happen. Everything is destroyed. It doesn't work out. and she has to pick up the pieces in the new world, a new environment, and is sort of being forced to adopt a new personality even. Everything has changed. So I've already made comparisons to how certain tropes can be found in other anime and manga, but the closest thing in recent times is kind of like Yona of the Dawn. It's a big fantasy epic. You got one girl, she's surrounded by pretty boys, and then they're going to have an adventure. Prince Freya is a bit more, it's a bit more violent, I would say. People are still getting killed in the Owner of the Dawn, but in this one, it's a little bit more blood, and the creators seem to have a thing about having hands cut off, so a little bit of dismemberment, and it's just kind of cold-hearted and harsh at sometimes because this is war, and the realities of war aren't great. You're getting people killed, so don't get too attached to some of the people you see because they might have quite a grisly fate. So on a violence level, I'd say it's more violent than the Owner of the Dawn and less violent than Wolfsman, if you've read that, because that was pretty hideous, that one. I'm honestly struggling to pick up details of the plot. I read this about 3 weeks ago, life got in the way, and I've forgotten big chunks of this, so apologies for the nature of this review. So I'm just giving my overall impressions. It does use familiar tropes and stereotypes to kind of like move its story along, so the dynamics of the characters kind of make sense, and so you don't have to worry about too much about the detail. It's the story that's pushing the characters forward. So because you already know a basic outline of how these characters function, it's how they react to the situation. That's what drives the story forward, and I do quite enjoy it. And that's my general impression of it, really. The artwork's nice and clean. You can see what's going on. It has like these big, you know how shojo manga work, where you have like the long panels or a whole page just to look at someone's face, just to get the emotion across. It does do like fairly standard shojo layers that you'd be familiar with if you've read these kinds of titles before. You might find, especially early on with the main character, that she is a little bit too much of a crybaby and she expects a little bit too much to be rescued by her favourite boys kind of thing. But it is that expectation that the manga sort of plays with. There isn't always going to be a guaranteed rescue. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, and she's going to get stabbed or something like this. People get stabbed. It's kind of a violent manga, and the violence is not only visceral, it's also in her mind because she's being forced to pursue this role that is nothing like her. Is it going to corrupt her? Is she going to become like a warmongering leader of a country? Is she going to reshape the country? Is it going to take an emotional toll on her? And already in the first couple of volumes, she does have a bit of post-traumatic stress. When she sees violent acts, she gets literal flashbacks to chapter 1, which I tried not to spoil as best as I could. Chapter 1's bad, man. Okay, so she's going to have a bit of an emotional thing. Whether she dwells on it or whether it comes back to bite her is yet to be seen, because she's constantly saying, I can't think about this, I need to push forward. If I don't push forward and take this responsibility seriously, everything is going to fall apart. So there is this kind of like pushing it back, and whether it will be fully addressed later on, I'm not sure. So whether they just go forward, save the day, be the heroes, maybe that's one path they can take. Alternatively, it could all come crashing down and it might be a very bad time. It could go either way. But for now, I'm quite enjoying this one. I'm looking forward to reading more in the future. And I hoped, maybe, if I didn't explain it super well, maybe I got a little bit of your interest in it. You can make your own mind up. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this one. This is Prince Freya, and this is Usho signing off, and hopefully I'll see you next time.